Welcome everyone to week 10, Humans and Soil in Regenerative Soil, the online course with me, Matt Powers. Thank you for being here. I'm really excited because we've passed the halfway mark. We have now started to apply things, and this is a little bit of review. Right now, we're going to review things a little bit, but we're also going to connect some of the things that we've learned to what we've previously known. So a little bit of review, a little bit of interconnection, a little bit of holistic thinking right now. This is going to help tie things together for us and then help us move forward into the next section. So I'm excited to talk about this, particularly because we can fix things. I know that there's predominantly this theme or this thread that's interwoven through so much of the entertainment, so much of the online media, that we can't fix things, that things are unfixable, that things are just broken, that things are just bad, that we live in a bad world. And that's just not the truth. The truth is everything is fixable. We just need to take responsibility for them and to actually interact with them ethically and regeneratively, which is ethically, right? So permaculture ethics, regenerative science, there's all these things that we can do in our world that can fix it, but people, are having trouble with right now putting those things into action. So the more that we can exist in that space of solutions, the more that we can exist in that place of, yes, we can fix things, the easier it will be to communicate these ideas, to have these ideas spread, and to have them implemented in our own lives. So I just want to start from that space because we're going to review some of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing so that we can aim true. These things are the things that are broken. So, massive global soil loss. This is the reason this course is regenerative soil. This is the reason that there is a call for this. And this is also the underlying reason behind all of our problems. So, massive global soil loss. And if you're like, Matt, social problems don't play into this, I've learned repeatedly that when the environment's messed up, the social side is messed up. So there's a connection between the two. So I really feel like the linchpin to all ecosystemic health is also the linchpin to our all social health and cultural health, because it's also the underpinning bedrock of all economies of the earth. So massive global soil loss has so many problems. But just to clarify, I'm not talking about this kind of erosion. There's natural erosion. It's happening all the time. It's this background thing. It's actually what helped form the first soils. And we've accelerated it. What we've done is accelerated. Just like with the carbon cycle, we caused a bottleneck in that cycle, but the carbon cycle is natural. But when we mismanage these habitats, like as in national forests, this is erosion, happening that's very common in national forests, and they're doing everything they can to stop it through chemical means without actually addressing the actual needs of the ecosystem itself. And so it's this mismanagement that has led to a massive amount of soil loss in all the wild spaces. Well, they're not really wild at all. They're just places that we say that they're wild. They're preserves that are mismanaged. Now, when fields are over-tilled, we also see a large loss of soil. And this makes sense, but there's more to it, because when these fields are sprayed with these chemicals, it kills the life. It breaks the structure of the soil down, because the structure largely is, made by the bacterial glues and the fungal glues and the fungal bodies themselves. So when we're spraying with chemicals, we're destroying all that. And since soils are mostly made of fungi, the fungicides are just undoing everything. And when it rains on that soil that now is toxic, it just goes right into the waterways and causes eutrophication and die-offs and dead zones. So our rivers, our deltas, and our coastlines have all been devastated. And that's the actual area where most of the biodiversity lives, and almost all the babies are born. So we've really shot ourselves in the foot in terms of the cycles of the earth. The animals and plants, we're killing them off, and so they're not performing the duties that they did in nature to create the natural abundance of oxygen, of good soil, of clean water that we've been enjoying this whole time. So again, it's a lack of taking responsibility. You know, in our cultures and societies, we don't value the natural world in a way that is educated, in a way that would lead to action, that would fix things. That's why this information in this course, information in permaculture and my advanced permaculture student online course is spreading the way it is, because people are in desperate need of the information and the how to and the why behind our world, so that they can make better decisions. Because if they had the information, they would make better decisions. Everywhere we practice tillage, agriculture, we cause desertification and eutrophication, regardless of price. So, organic fields, big organic fields, they actually, because they didn't use chemicals, had to till more. So because there's more tillage, there's less soil structure, meaning the soils in the rain are leaching off, running off, and going away. So it's still tillage, organic or not. Bad soil is bad soil. This is why some people could be using chemicals sparingly on really fungal dominant, high soil organic matter soil and have better soil than some organic farms. And this has been used as a tool to knock down, organic as a scam and this and that, as if people didn't have a diversity of soils on their farms and their climates and the history and all these things play into it. So I just want us to compartmentalize that, understand, see how that is. Regenerative agriculture is here to fix that. They want people to focus on their soils rather than just fitting into this organic box of check boxes with the USDA. They want something substantial. Of course, they're going to try to get that through the USDA again, just like they did with organic. So regenerative organic is continuing this process of politicizing, and it runs the same possibility of becoming a political football and getting watered down, just like organic did. So I worry a little bit about that. But when we talk about regenerative soil science, it's not going to be a government regulation. It's not going to be regulated by the government. Yeah, and people have lots of definitions around regenerative, and that's why in my book I'm really, really clear about what it is for me, for my book, for regenerative soil, for the focus of this study and practice. So let's talk a little bit more about desertification, because there's 12 million hectares of land lost to desertification a year. And this was the Fertile Crescent. Remember, the birthplace of Western agriculture and the Middle East and all this stuff, Western, culture essentially. Well, when we look at the Fertile Crescent nowadays, it's not so fertile, is it? So where did all that water and fertility go? Because it's the birthplace of all agriculture and the birthplace of culture for the Middle East and the West. Now let's go somewhere else. Let's go to Asia. The birthplace of Asian agriculture, the Indus Plateau, looked like this from all that agriculture, and then they followed up with grazing. So it was completely desertified. But it only took 9 years to reverse that. And it only took earthworks and perennials and time. So this is not a death sentence to say that the world is desertified. All the carbon that was missing from that area, all those soils are now starting off at zero, and every year they're going up in their soil organic matter levels. Every year they're going up in their nutrients and their water holding capacity. So their pH is going up, the energy they're holding is going up, soil organic matter is going up, the carbon drawdown is going up, and they're no-till because it's perennial. So stuff's not being lost into the environment, into the atmosphere. So this is a stunning turn of events and a proof of what's possible. this is the greatest accomplishment of modern China. I know that they've, had this great economy and stuff, though lately they're having some trouble. But the real greatest thing that they did is nothing to do with their economy. Though the people in this area had an economic boom afterwards and were finally able to not be starving. It's more about how the people in the land are linked. And if we heal the land, we heal the people, regardless of what country and culture they're part of. And what's really wild about the Les Plateau story is they really had to democratize, privatize, bring capitalism and American ideals into the equation to get this to go off the ground, because they wouldn't do it just because they were ordered by the communist government. They had to be given responsibility. They had to be given the ability to take responsibility. And so that's what they did. And that's why it was such a huge success, because they own the land now. They own those plots where they're growing that food, and they own the profits from that. So it's a fascinating story. It's a hopeful story for the future. And it really shows how quickly we could turn all this around. So all these desertified areas we could be turning into, and I'm not talking about like the Gobi Desert. I'm not talking about most of Australia's deserts. Those are set in for tens of thousands and even longer, hundreds of thousands of years. That's going to be harder to take care of. The Sahara will take a lot of time because it's been set in so long. But the Sahara used to be a brittle climate that was pushed too far during Roman times. It's where the Barbary lions came from, where all the other animals that they were slaughtering in the Colosseum came from. So we could bring all that back. It just takes a lot of time, work, and effort and investment. But we can, and we have proof that it's possible. So early man hunted with dog packs, because dogs were the first animal that we were able to domesticate and work with. And we hunted with them, and they hunted in packs. So because of that, we had this ability to overwhelm certain types of animals, separate them, and as well, solitary types of animals, we were able to hunt really well. So mastodons went extinct as the Ice Age ended 10,000 years ago, and as we began to hunt them. And the thing is, they were the annual to perennial disturbance. They would eat trees, they would knock trees over, they would create disturbance areas that would allow for annuals to grow. And we would be following these animals, drawing them, fascinated by them, eating the annuals, high energy annuals that grew after them, saving their seeds. And these are the seeds that we eventually replanted and started gardening and farming with. And because they were annuals, right? They follow where disturbance goes. And so we were observing these animals for a long time, and we started hunting them as they grew weaker, as the climate favored us, and as we got better at pack hunting. So this is an example of North America and other parts of the Northern Hemisphere. But when we look at Australia, a very interesting thing happened there, because they didn't have pack animals in Australia. So from what they can tell from the archaeological record, when dogs and people came to Australia, a huge part of the desertification was removing the animals from the land, just like in Africa, where they caused the brittle climates. You lose the animals, you lose all the cycles that hold that climate together. That's what happened in Australia. That's why it's a simplified ecology and biodiversity. And that's also why it occurred to Bill Mollison when he was in Tasmania looking at the plants. He's like, there's like only 4 or 6 plants in this entire ecology. This is the simplest ecology. It's like, I could plant a better ecology than this. And so that's what he realized. And it's because it's a simplified climate. That's why eucalyptus occupies all the levels of succession. And that's why it's such a desertified continent. It's the driest, most depleted, most efficient soil continent on the planet. And it all goes back to the early times when man first came on there and started hunting the animals, and all the large animals disappeared from Australia. And once they were gone, there was nothing to fill those gaps, really. So biodiversity, the story of loss of biodiversity, the story of loss of soil go hand in hand. So when I say soil is behind like all of our problems, it really is. It's intertwined, connected to, beneath, in the middle of so many of our greatest issues and failings and historical tragedies. People are invading other countries because they've lost their soil fertility. That's what the Romans were doing. That's what Europe did to the rest of the world. Colonialism, mercantilism. It's because they had run out of fertile soil. They had run out of their ability to generate resources and keep their economy healthy at home. So they went and smashed their neighbor's, windshield and went and took something. You know what I mean? So it's really sobering when you get to that point and realize it is all part of our history. And that's what dirt erosion of civilizations really shows us. But also the biggest estate on earth and dark emu also show us that. And the reality is, in taming nature, we went a bit too far. We killed nature. And I think that that's a huge part of the disillusionment, depression, the loneliness of modern man, is we're missing nature, which is linked to, spirituality, faith, all these things, because nature is inspiring. Nature is majestic. Nature is a teacher. Just like this class, it's like I want nature to speak. I want us to see nature unadulterated and devoid of opinions, or at least having the separate opinions and analyses that we perceive separate from the data, so that we all can kind of see it could be that. It looks like it's likely that. But to play with that uncertainty, I think that we're caught up in an age of people running around beating their chests, and a lot of people telling other people how to live and what's right and what's wrong. And the reality is, in most spaces, we need to give each other room, give each other understanding and compassion, and then give ourselves, a dose of humility about everything. We need to be wrong so that we have room to grow and be righter. So it's the same sort of thing. We've painted ourselves into a corner with nature. We painted ourselves, into this corner of perfectionism and having to appear always perfect, on camera, and I'm not excusing bad behavior. Don't get me wrong. But I do recognize that people feel an enormous pressure in our current culture and society, just enormous pressure from all sides, and fear of judgment and all this stuff. And I can't help but feel like that pressure comes from a world where the cycles themselves are bottlenecking and building up like a hose that has a big kink in it. And you've got this big swelling bulge in the hose. And since we're all connected, since all things are connected, and behaviorally, we imitate the state of the world around us. We are reactive. We are input machines. So the world of stress, we put out a world of stress. And in a world where we've killed the thing that made this world amazing, abundant, natural, comforting, hopeful, inspiring, you're going to see a corollary in the social, in the mindscape of the world. So, tangent, forgive me. But what we did then is what we're doing now, but exponentially multiplied, and not just, socially, but Deforestation is rising exponentially. Wildfires globally are rising. Extinctions are rising. Flooding kills and removes soil. And catastrophic floods are rising. So why is this all happening? Is it the ice age is coming? Is it your gas from your car being, you know what I mean? Is it the CO2 from the car? No. We aren't managing our ecosystems properly. The reality is, if we actually managed it properly, we would have an annual budget that we could literally burn things and have our cars run just fine. But let's capture the pollution. The CO2 is actually a plant food. The pollution is a huge issue, and we can scrub that coming out of the cars easily. And then once a month or twice a year, you take that filter off and replace it. And then take that filter, and then we have to process it. We have to get better at processing that. We'll get into that in a minute. But the reality is it's a failure to manage our ecosystems properly, because we have the room in the soil, we have enough space and land to have the trees and the grasslands growing. We just aren't doing it. We have the science, we have the knowledge. Instead, we're continuously destroying nature and then saying, oh, it's your car that you're driving that's really causing the problem. And it just doesn't bear out. It just doesn't bear out when you look at the science and look at the actual numbers. There's a bottleneck of CO2. That much is clear, because there's no photosynthetic sink. They're like, oh, we're running out of soil. Yeah, because we destroy it very efficiently. So we're blaming common people for their cars, for their shopping, but we're doing nothing. And we're not teaching anyone about this other than in these kinds of independent courses and independent education. And if you select universities that are using my stuff, we're not teaching people. And we're not valuing it as a society, solutions. Instead, we're valuing getting more and more hysterical about the problems and blaming. We're getting really good at blaming. And no one's stepping up to manage the ecosystems themselves. And this is really the reason. It's really sad. It's a lack of responsibility. It's a lack of leadership. So basic infrastructure is old, outdated, and inadequate. That's also a huge part of the problem. The dikes, Katrina happened because they didn't update the dikes, and they were telling people forever that the next the next storm was going to just overwhelm the dikes. They're going to have all these problems. They didn't do anything about it. And we're also just doing plain dumb things. This is an old-timey map of California. Hey, what's that giant lake there? I don't remember. There's actually a city called Tulare, if I recall. Well, Tulare County's never-ending drought brings dried up wells and plenty of misery is a headline. So this is a never-ending drought, dried up wells, but I thought there was a big lake there. Where did the lake go? Well, in California, they got this idea at some point to capture all the natural flow of water, to capture it all from all the source points, and then to drain them before they got to the valley, and then before they got to the foothills. So for decade upon decade, they've been preventing the natural infiltration of rain and runoff from the mountains and other water sources from reaching those areas. So instead of a duck hunting and fishing paradise all the way from the bottom of the Central Valley all the way up to Sacramento, which it was only 2 generations ago, it's now a giant desert. And this is like the breadbasket of America. So again, it's a man-made disaster, and it's a man-made climate change locally. But this style of doing this, I know it's the most cut up and abused hydrological system in the world, But this is like the model for the world. This is what we're doing. We're draining the aquifers. We're capturing all the water at the key points. And then we're running it through turbines as we run it down the mountain and charging the people for that electricity as we steal their water, or as they steal our water, right? But people living in those cities are the ones taking the water. So if you were like living in LA or Yorba Belinda, Orange County, I was living in Orange County for a bit. They're just taking water from those mountains. So this is stupid. All those forest fires all up and down the Sierra Nevadas are man-made. The actual logging roads from the original logging events all point downward into the gullies. And so when the water does come, it goes fast down and causes erosion, taking away more soil. So they've dried out the soils. They've caused desertification all over California systematically. And then they have the audacity to blame it on climate change. It's your car. We need to attack the people and make them feel guilty. No, it's this. And so very simple, basic things about ecology are being covered up as we destroy the underpinning of not just our economy, but our basic ability to live in these areas. California is not going to be livable in many bioregions soon because of the choices that they're making. And I lived in California for a very long time. Many of you live in California. I love California. They're destroying it. They have made a choice to blame it on the people while they systematically destroy it and hide how they're doing it. So this is really sad for me. And this is what's happening. This is the metaphor for everything globally. I mean, they're not the only ones draining their aquifers. They're not the only ones doing all this stuff. They're just the ones in the brittle climate in America that is the canary in the coal mine. So we're going to see this same trend spread to Oregon, spread to Washington, and it already has. Utah, Nevada, Idaho are seeing crazy fires every summer. So this is just the beginning. It's really, really sad when we look at this, but we can fix it. But we got to be smarter. We can't just plant monocultures and then chop them all down. We have to stop deforestation because it's causing rising salinity of our soils. We're losing 730,000 hectares of land every year to salinity. And all this equals a lack of soil organic matter, a lack of carbon in the soil because they're one and the same. So we're making sand, we're making a desert. All these things interlink, but they come at it from different words and from different angles. The biology and the plants and the fungi and the bacteria, they're all trying to make more soil organic matter happen. Everything is trying to do it. Decomposition itself is trying to do it. Photosynthesis is trying to energize that organic matter that it's bringing down. The soil organic matter release, the carbon release, the sugars released, all of these come together to build soil organic matter. And it's just a natural part of photosynthesis. It's the dark part of soil. Our lighter soils are showing to us that they lack in carbon. Our darker soils are showing us that they have the carbon there. A lack of soil organic matter equals low energy, low nutrients, low water holding capacity, low numbers of diversity, a lack of life, and a lack of an ecosystem. Soil is the linchpin to life, to civilization, to health. If we want a healthy future, to fight environmental collapse, to live regeneratively and ethically, and to experience a life of abundance and freedom, we want healthy and abundant soil everywhere. But that means we need to relearn old ways and learn some new ways to build cycle, and partner with soil and soil life. We can change the world radically, but it's up to us. We have to make those choices. We have to partner with soil and soil life. It takes our participation and support. Will you join us? Regenerative Soil, the full program, we're going to dive deep. We're going to be looking commercial, we're going to be looking DIY, we're going to be going garden, we're going to be going farm scale. We're going to cover it all. We want to serve everyone at all levels, and we want to create that fluency, micro to macro, so that we can spread the regeneration of our soil, our ecosystems, all our systems, all across the world. You can do this. You can regenerate soil, because regenerative soil is the linchpin for life. It's the linchpin for all systems, all of our civilization. Everything is running on this. Everything is based on this. Everything is relying upon this. Check out the link down below. Sign up and join us in Regenerative Soil, the full online course. You're not going to want to miss it. I'm Matt Powers. Grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. Now, oxidized soil, this is another angle on the same. When we talk about desertifying, we talk about a lack of soil organic matter, we very well could be talking about oxidized soils. Oxidized soils are drier soils. So in a world heating up and a world desertifying, the Fenton reaction is something that's going to be constantly happening, where carbon, and that means soil organic matter, is being lost from the soil. So bare soil is oxidizing, and photosynthesis is reduction, taking on energy, adding energy to the soil. So the lower the soil organic matter, the higher the Fenton reaction. And if we take photosynthesis out, there's nothing to reverse this. So we must bring back soil organic matter. We must bring back photosynthesis. Oxidized soils equal less nutrients, less water, less energy, less life, and less ecosystemic strength. So just like soil organic matter, it's a dead end that we don't want to go down. It's essentially a barren world is where we're headed, like Mars. We're in the process of creating a world that is like Mars, and we're doing it with reckless abandon. And nutrient deficiency. This is another huge problem, because we keep removing the nutrients from the soil in the form of food or in the form of leaching or erosion. Losing that soil means we're losing those nutrients. And because of that, our plants are sick. Nutrient deficiency equals vulnerability to pests, diseases, and viruses. So nutrient deficiency equals soil deficiency and biological deficiency. So we're essentially looking at a world of biological deficiency, because it is those nutrients that are facilitated, released, passed around by that biology. So it's biology that protects plants and feeds plants. And without those things in place, we're going to have nutrient deficiency and then pests and diseases. They're all in this chain link effect together, all tied together. So desertification, tillage, oxidation, all the synthetic chemicals and biocides together have killed most of the soil life on Earth. So we must re-inoculate the world. And it's going to feel like we are alone at first. We're going to have these pockets, these isolated oases of living soil. We're not only losing soil, but the soil that we have that's left is dead dirt. So it's an even smaller number if we just look at living versus dead soil, dead dirt versus living soil. There's so few places with living soil. There are these tiny, tiny pockets. So you might feel like this because that's the reality. This is the reality. We are alone in a world devoid of life. And that's why there's so much sickness, so much pathogens, and so much weakness in our world. So toxic soils. We've gathered and concentrated elements that were never meant to be gathered and never meant to be concentrated. This is a picture of mercury. We really have to be careful with all the things that are in concentration, even some of the microbes that we could be working with. You don't want to breathe them. You don't want to get them in your nose and eyes. Same thing with, manure. They're concentrated nutrients. So even good things concentrated can be bad, but these things, these heavy metals and toxins, radioactive material, in any kind of concentration, they are bad. Microplastics, all of these things are bad. So we want to dilute, we want to make inert, we want to spread these things out. We want to make sure that these things don't bioaccumulate. We need to be very aggressive with handling this problem and put a lot of our best thinkers on this to try to turn all this into fuel, turn all this into microbial food, turn it all back into organic matter, because we can, but we need to take the time. We need to put the resources into it and the funding and the education. So what to do about all this? Well, erosion. We need to stop erosion practices. We need to restore the hydrology. We need to use earthworks, restore forests, plant perennials, have low or no tillage, and no synthetics or biocides. Essentially all the things that you would learn in permaculture. Lack of soil organic matter. Add soil organic matter and plant plants. Lack of minerals. Add minerals specific to the ones you need at the amounts that you need. Lack biology. Add biology, generalized and specific. Concentrated toxins will dilute them or make them inert. We must take drastic action, because if we don't, no one else will. And it's in going all in, taking the drastic action, making things happen at scale that's going to inspire others to follow, to do the same, to make it a trend, to make it a full movement that takes the mainstream by storm, restores common sense, and flips our world from the brink of disaster into abundance. Whew. So that's what we must do. And with soil, it's pretty darn clear. And I know that we touched upon a lot of bigger picture things in that opener, because it's holistic, isn't it? These problems that we have. But how to fix the soil is much more compartmentalized, and it's holistic in its own way, but it's not as big picture. And because it allows us to just kind of get our heads down into the actual particulars and focus, we really can be liberated by this. There's a simplicity to this, as you can see, and we're going to go over each of these individually. It's going to play into what you've learned along the way in our journey together. And it's going to show us how all the complexity, all the problems, even all the myriad solutions that I bring up, all fall into simple and clear categories and easy choices. Because you live in a particular climate, you've got particular goals, and what's available to you is particular. So given that, once we run through this, you're going to start seeing what's right for you. And then as we go deeper into testing, and then as we go deeper into the actions, you're going to know what's right for you. All right. So we're going to talk about this. This is what regenerative soil is. This is essentially an outline for the entire course, entire book. Regenerative soil is a combination of the right plant roots and photosynthesis, the right amounts of air and water, the right amount of organic matter, right soil biology, and the right minerals. So let's talk about it. Let's start with the right minerals. Rock dust or rock flour. This is pulverized rock. So it has crazy surface area just like our clays would, but it has a large amount of minerals, a broad diversity of minerals. I recommend volcanic basalt because it's going to have the most minerals. It's going to be paramagnetically charged. It's going to be fresh. It's going to be awesome. Volcanic soils, volcanic rock. This is brand new, fresh from the earth. It's paramagnetically charged. And it's very different than, like, let's say, for instance, the natural soils that you would find in Australia where they didn't have an ice age to pulverize the rock, create new rock flour or anything like that. They have ancient soils. So, and then people have been removing the nutrients from all these areas of agriculture. The natural erosion has too. All of the, Roundup's a chelator, a mineral chelator. So it's causing all the minerals to be released and to leach away and everything. So we're seeing that rock dust and rock flour has an incredible value for helping rebuild the fertility of soil. Seaweed brings those minerals and some of those trace minerals and even, unique to them, trace minerals in colloidal form. So seaweed's really incredible. All that eutrophication, all that runoff, all that soil loss, that's being tied up by the seaweed. So we can regeneratively harvest seaweed, let it constantly regrow, and take that back onto land to bring back the minerals that were lost through the watershed, through the hydrological cycle that brings it down to the oceans, back to the soil. Ocean minerals, similar thing. Mineral-rich compost, you could be adding kelp, you could be adding seaweeds or rock dust to that compost to make it mineral-rich. The same thing with your animals. You could be feeding them mineral-rich sources of food or supplementing their food with minerals and then releasing that manure. Now everything's been microbially digested. It's more bioavailable. The bacteria have locked the nutrients up in their bodies, and so they can be drained through rhizophagy or the soil food web processes. But you could also do chelated minerals and mineral blends like what John Kempf offers. And the reality is there's so many different cycles of these minerals, as you've learned about, and hitting all these things properly sometimes has to do with making sure our soil's in the ideal zone, making sure our soils are well aerated or aerated and just enough, the Goldilocks region, all these sorts of things as we talk about. But remembering that we have these essential plant nutrients is really the key. So we need the right minerals. We need all of them there because they are all essential. And as we learn from the plant health pyramid, they're critical for the first passive stages of plant health, for complete protein and complete sugar synthesis. So the right biology plays right into all of this, especially the top two layers of that plant health pyramid. The soil food web, they are literally taking those exudates, providing foods back. They're releasing nutrients in the soil. But so is the rhizophagy process. So are rhizobacteria, so are mycorrhizal fungi. So are the endophytes inside the plants and inside the leaves themselves as well. It's this robust biology that equals an abundance of microbial metabolites for plants. So we have to have it all. We have to be triggering it all. We have to be feeding it all. We have to be inoculating it all, because this is how you achieve that abundance of microbial metabolites, that robust biology that John Kempf is talking about. And that's why, spelled out in plain English, put out into the charts, for every type of microbe, we've got a category. We've got it listed so that you can find these things. You can find mixes that have these things, and you can get all the things that you need for your site. So that means inoculants, biofertilizers, compost teas, IMOs, JMS. Now, how to raise the soil organic matter levels? Well, plant roots are the ones putting out carbon, putting out sugars, so it's really stimulating them with the soil food web and with healthy photosynthesis and with rhizophagy that allows for these things to happen at their pinnacle. And when plants are healthy, they're building the soil. They're releasing protons. They're releasing polysaccharides, not monosaccharides. If they're unhealthy, they're going to attract the pests. They're going to be hurting the soil. Anything that boosts microbial activity and plant photosynthesis is going to help. So there are extracts, there are certain minerals, there are certain phytochemicals, phytohormones. There's all these things that can trigger, can boost. Paramagnetic rock dust will boost microbial activity immensely. So all these things can really help. We just got to remember that any of that is going to actually help the soil organic matter as well. But the classic compost does this as well. So does compost tea, because it feeds the rhizophagy cycle. But so does mulch, and so does ramial mulch, which is more fungal. It's little sticks. It's woody, right? It's perfect for the orchard. And then wood chips. And I actually would like to say that ramial wood chips are better. Ramial mulch is better because they are younger twigs and sticks, so they have higher nutrient amounts. They have more moisture, and they have higher nitrogen amounts, so that they break down faster and provide more nutrients in the process. And then the right plants and photosynthesis. So it's not enough that you have all of that. You gotta pick the right plants, and then make sure that they're properly photosynthesizing. Again, I'm harping on things, but you'll see why. So plants that don't get enough light don't grow properly, and that's why, in really shady areas, like in this picture, you'll see moss covering the ground, or a ground cover that is adapted to low light and very little diversity. So you don't see a lot of plants in there because there's not enough light. So we need to make sure that our plants are photosynthesizing properly so that they don't hurt the soil. They help the soil, because it's either or. They can't just do like neutral. They're either going to be helping or hurting the soil. So we have to push it to the healthy side. Because healthy plants, you're going to be able to know they're going to be putting off more food. They're going to be putting off more fruit. And at the same time as they're doing that, below ground, they're putting out more exudates. They're putting out more soil organic matter components, more lipids, more protons. They're going to be putting out a lot more. And this goes again to the fact that unhealthy plants or stressed plants are releasing hydroxides, which are attracting anions, yes, but they're also attracting pests and pathogens. So even good plants hurt the soil when they are sick. So get your soils right so your plants can focus on being healthy, and then choose your plants correctly. I love C4 grasses because they're so expert at bringing down carbon. Half of what they put in up top, they put in down below into the soil as soil organic matter. And they're so good at this that they literally are taking down 400 times the amount of carbon release atmospherically every single year that they grow, just in the season that they're growing. So we can completely take down all of the excess carbon with plants like corn, like in this picture, in a very short period of time. But it's the management that's holding it up. So we love corn, and we have enough of it everywhere that we can make a dent. Sorghum is another C4 grass. C4 grass just means that they're adapted to take in way more carbon. They're taking in carbon faster. They're producing more sugars. And this makes sense when you think about it. And when you look at it, it's like we grow a lot of this. So if it's helping the soil, why isn't it helping that soil? Sugarcane is as well. So now you kind of see that these guys are so good at bringing down sugars from the atmosphere that we use them for sugar. So there's corn sugar. That's, high fructose corn syrup. There is sorghum syrup. It's like a molasses. It's incredible. And then there's sugarcane, which is molasses, which is sugar that we all know. And all of these have this ability to provide us with so much sweetener because they are bringing down the carbon in larger amounts than other plants. They're C4 grasses. So we cover a lot of land with these plants. So if we just took the time to let them do their jobs, we would have an incredible result very quickly. So if we only grew these all regeneratively, a new world would emerge. Legumes and some cover crops. This is pretty darn common. Most people are doing winter cover crops. This is the most commonly done thing. We've got a list here, a chart here from the actual book, and there's a lot of different choices. And the idea is that you pick and choose what's right for you, for your needs, but at least have a summer mix and a winter mix, because those are just things that you need to know so that you can start building your soil up. Because if we don't, we'll find ourselves in a position where we can't quickly build it up, that we have to take a lot of time to do so. So put the work in now so you don't have to stop everything to do that work later. And then mycorrhizal over non-mycorrhizal. So mycorrhizal means they partner with mycorrhizal fungi. And as we talked about, amaranth on the right is non-mycorrhizal. On the left is squash. That's mycorrhizal. So we're always going to want to lean towards the mycorrhizal plants. Most plants are mycorrhizal, which is a big relief. And the reality is it's really weeds that are non-mycorrhizal. They're actinobacterial. They're favoring actinobacteria, which are killing the fungi. So brassicas, amaranth, chenopodium, so beets, amaranth, all the brassicas, they're all going to be partnering with actinobacteria, which is going to harm the soil fungi, and it's going to set back succession. And we really want to be able to be in that sweet spot. Once we get there, our plants are so happy that they are resistant to all the pests and pathogens and all the different viruses and diseases. Now, air. Air is something that is contentious because people get really confused. Number one, we need to give our plants space so that there's airflow around them so that they don't get airborne diseases or wet or blight or anything. The air moves around and acts as a sterilizing agent. But when I talk about air in the soil, I'm not talking about this. I'm not talking about disc turning. I'm not talking about any kind of tillage like this. We don't want to pulverize. Just keep things light and airy, because the air contains key elements for photosynthesis, for the plant's health and respiration. And we want to make sure that the plant maintains access to those things. So our soil really needs to have a really nice structure to it. It can't be like cement. It can't be too chunky, like undecomposed matter. It really needs to be well aggregated, well decomposed organic matter and minerals. This is me with a broad fork. This shows you how the broad fork works, how it's really powerful and breaking up compaction, and also for digging swales, because that's what I'm doing with it here. I love the broad fork. If you're looking for a way to aerate soil, this is a really great way. You can be really gentle and just lift and pull it right back out, and just leave the rip in the soil as is as well. So if you're going to do ripping or broad forking, you can do deep aeration annually, and then light aeration seasonally or a case-by-case basis so that you can plant or replant, because you need to disturb the top layer, and you might need to gently aerate to get things going, especially if there's a lot of rainfall in your area and things tend to compact with that rainfall. But remember, in all of this, the mechanical side, the hand side, all of that, it's best to let the biology do the work, because biological tillage is always superior. And I mean, not just the earthworms and the soil food web members, because they do it well, but the biological tillage plants like daikon radish, they do a great job as well. And then water. Water is essential to life. It's why it is the focus of so much in our world, so much in our lives. But knowing what's in our water is so critically important. And if you aren't filtering your water, you might have things in it that you don't want. You might have concentrations in your plants that you don't want. So increasingly, farmers are testing and filtering their water. And then you want to make sure that you don't water too hard or too much. because we have to make sure that we water the way that nature does it and the way that plants would prefer it, and not water, too little. So it's this somewhere in between those, right? We can't do too little, we can't do too much. It needs to be Goldilocks. So it needs to be just right. You can't do too much, you can't do too little. You're going to have to stick your fingers in the soil, dig down a little bit, disturb the soil a little bit to really understand, is your water penetrating down there? Is the water enough? And are my plants getting enough or too much? Are they stressed from too much water? So it's a combination of timing and amounts and rates all at once. And it can take some practice and time to get right. And that's okay. Experiment, test and monitor, and find your Goldilocks. All right. Thank you so much for being part of this week. This is a lighter week. I know that we've had some heavier weeks, but this is more of a review, tying it together, framing our minds before we enter into the tests, before we enter into the actions. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. I'm Matt Powers, your host in Regenerative Soil. So excited and so grateful for you. This is going to be awesome. I can't wait to see your soil improve. I can't wait to see your excitement and your enthusiasm as you get to see this happen for you. I'm Matt Powers. Grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. And I'll see you next time. Regenerative soil is the breakthrough that farmers and gardeners all over the world are using to unlock the full potential of their plants and soils. Universities are doubling their yields. Farmers are increasing their water holding capacity by thousands of gallons of water per acre per year. Gardeners are seeing pest pressure disappear and evaporate. The most challenging aspects of growing food are being addressed by focusing on the linchpin to all life, the soil. If we can get our soil right, we can grow amazing food, raise amazing animals, and overcome all of these challenges. We skip the pests, the diseases, the viruses, and soil damage. We instead focus on making things better and better, so our food, yields, and nutrition continue to improve exponentially with every single season. Learn to understand soil from the micro to the macro, down to the individual microbes, ions, and enzymes, and how they directly relate to hands-on action and pragmatic strategies for our farms, fields, and gardens. We can grow food faster with higher yields and nutritional density, but it all comes down and comes back to your soil. Is it resilient? Is it regenerative? Join us and change the way you see the world, food, soils, and everything and how it relates. I'm Matt Powers. Grow abundantly, learn daily, and live regeneratively. And click that link. Join us this season. Don't miss out.